So though I tremble in the darkness, in the cold and frozen snow, I am grateful for the winter, for the winter comes to show that our trouble is never over and our work is never done. But with the turning of the season, we will always see the sun, and the sound it makes is an honest song. Our hearts sing an honest song. Oh, our hearts sing an honest song. Young, I was fickle, you were so strong. I remember trees as they called your name. Mother told me, listen up close, there's a story they have composed. Look how the clapping arms are swaying high. Your mother stayed by your side, watched the curtain tear in your eyes. trying to get to you, but you came to me instead. With the dawn,
Good morning, Watershed. We are so glad you're here, whether you are in person or joining us online. If you would please stand and sing with us this morning.
So take me to the riverside. You take me under baptize. I need you. Oh God, I need you. Your loving kindness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony in my ears. It's like holy water on my skin.
I just want to know your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really helps me be the change. I just want to know your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really helps me be the change. I just want to know your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really helps me be the change. I just want to know your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really helps me be the change. Your loving kindness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water. Your loving kindness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. Like holy water
Good morning. How are we doing this morning? Yeah, there is a lot going on right now. I've got 4 kids, ages 11 is the oldest, down to 1, and Halloween is this week, and I'm terrified. It's on a Thursday. It's on a school night. That's actually the least of all the things going on in the world, but we're so glad that you're here. And we often take a few moments at the beginning to kind of allow people to get into their seats, allow people to take a few deep breaths, allow people to be present. And as a group, the band and the production team, we prayed this morning, and one of my prayers often, not just for our team, but for all of you, is that we could all be present, that we could all be here, and that we don't have to suppress things to walk in the room, that all of the things that make us who we are can be present, that they can be here with us. And so we're going to sing a song. We've done it once before, so you may not know it, but as you're listening, allow yourself to take some deep breaths, allow yourself to be present, and maybe you can find something this morning that is needed, something that you need from the morning.
Will we ever rise? Will we ever rise above fear? Can we learn to see the need? Can we share humanity? I can see another day come. Broken people, we can be made whole. We can be made whole. We can be made whole. As we lay down our weapons, open up our hearts. Love is breaking us, love remaking us. Will we ever rise? Will we ever rise above the pain? Can we learn another way? Forgive as you forgave. I can see another day come. Broken people, we can be made whole. We can be made whole. We can be made whole. As we lay down our weapons, open up our hearts. Love is breaking us, love remaking us. Come heal now, take away short-sightedness, so we can see what we were meant to see. Feel like devastating darkness. I can see another day come. Oh, I can see another day come. Broken people, we can be made whole. Broken people, we can be made whole. Broken people, we can be made whole. We can be made whole. We can be made whole. As we lay down our weapons, open up our hearts. Love is breaking us, love remaking us. As we lay down our weapons, open up our hearts. Love is breaking us, love remaking us. God, this morning as we come to this room and we bring all of the things in that are parts of who we are. God, may we lay down all of the weapons that would try to protect us from being able to be ourselves. All the things that we have to do to try to be something for someone else. God, we've learned in so many ways that there are parts of us that we have to hide, parts of us that we have to suppress, parts of us that we have to change. And God, maybe just for a few moments this morning, God, may we feel safe enough, may we feel loved enough, may we feel like this space is maybe a few moments where we can let those guards down. God, as we take a few breaths, may we find what we need today. In the name of you and love, we pray this. Amen. I want to give you a few moments to greet the people around you, say hello, and then we'll continue with the morning.
A Watershed family, all my introverts, good job staying in your seats. All my extroverts, come back to your seats. Pass the piece is over. I'm sorry, but not sorry. Well, good morning. My name is Dominique. I am on staff here at Watershed, and it's a great day. I know it's kind of dreary outside, and it's cold, and I want to go back to bed and under my blankets, but we're so glad that you are here this morning. If this is your first time, welcome. We're so glad that you walked in through these doors. We've got a couple of things for you. So if you would like to meet us in the very back, some of our staff members would be in the very back of the service. We would love to say hello. But if you don't want to do that, we have another option. So we are all about options and variety here. So we have a connection card, and what we like for you to do is just fill out that connection card. Let us know a little bit about who you are. If this is your first visit, or maybe it's your 100th, you've been here for 5 years and you've never done this. We want to hear from you, and we will love to get you connected and plugged in to all of the things that we have here at Watershed. We also have a Connect and Learn page on our website. We've been talking about that for a while. So that is a great way, and there's a little screenshot of how you can actually access that. But that's a way for you to be updated with everything that's going on, any events, preface, reclamation, Shadology, any regional collectives that happened this past Friday. But this is a great way for you to stay up to date with everything that's going on. So we're so glad that you are here. We also welcome our online community that's watching on Facebook. Hello, friends. And secondly, we are going to start our new series called Nevertheless. So we encourage you to come next month. We've got some things that we want to share with you as we get ready to wrap up the year and as we enter into 2025. Let me give you some secrets. We're going to talk about giving. We're also going to talk about just updates on our partners. We're going to share some stories from our Watershed families and much, much more. We also have Friendsgiving. And so we will love for you to be present for that next month as we get ready to wrap up the end of this year. That's crazy, right? And so we're so glad that you are here. So now we get to transition into another song. It's our focus song. And I encourage you all to just really pay attention to the lyrics and just sit with the lyrics as you listen to them and as you pay attention. Welcome to Watershed.
There's a fire where my home used to be. There's a cry in the cities for peace. From the old and young, I'll be gone. Take me higher to the light. Wasn't born just to die in the fight. There's no God who will be on your side when the war is done. All that I'll become is just another stranger living in a foreign land with no country. Nobody to understand. Keep your fathers, keep your flag. Your vision of the future is past. Was your kingdom that great looking back? Or was it bought and blood? All that you become is just another stranger living
Welcome. My name is David. I'm one of the pastors here at Watershed. Quick thing before I transition. My time up here is going to be brief. Ish. Yeah, thank you, right? I think that was like a encouraging boo. Anyway, if you unsubscribed from our newsletter, first off, boo to you. But it has been completely redesigned, and if you want to learn more about that song that just played, well, it's too late because you unsubscribed, and that was that was in this week's newsletter. No, but the point of me bringing this up is simply to say that we're going to be highlighting some of the focus songs that we do, highlighting our speakers and things like that. So if you did unsubscribe to our newsletter, you should resubscribe. And if you don't know how to do that, you can go to that Connect and Learn page that Dom showed you a few minutes ago, and you can do it there. So that's my only PSA for today. What I'm actually up here to do is to welcome up one of my very favorite guest speakers that we had. Kimberly, I said guest speakers, not teaching team members. Just to, gotta give her weeklies. But no, Carrie Ladisor, who is right there. You can come on up. Carrie is the executive director of the Post-Evangelical Collective. So stay in your seats or stand, or just stay kind of where you're at after the final song, because I'm going to invite Carrie back up and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I don't think I have anything else to say. So welcome her better than you just did, and I'm going to walk off the stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David and Dominique, and just all of you for having me. It is a real delight to get to be with you. Perhaps not on the topic that I'm going to speak about today. I'll just be real transparent. I did a lot of work around this topic of grief, even this week, as I was preparing to be with you. But I'm thrilled to be here this morning, and I may have shared last time I was here, so forgive me if I did. I feel like consent and full disclosure when you're standing before people is important. The previous church that I worked at, I was a pastor, and I had a guy come in on Sunday morning. We had a meeting, and he was like, yeah, I was telling my colleagues that I had to go in for this meeting with Pastor Ludacris, because he didn't know how to say my last name. Most people don't know how to say my last name, and so they would call me Luda often. And what you have to know about this is when I was in the 5th grade, I rapped my speech to become student body president. So I felt like little girl Carrie felt so seen in this moment when they called me Ludacris. And this morning, I'm not going to rap for you, but I would love to begin with a poem. It's by Padraig Otwama, and it's called Rules of Life. That you were born and that you will die. That you will sometimes love enough and sometimes not. That you will lie, if only to yourself. That you will get tired. That you will learn most from the situations you did not choose. That there will be some things that move you more than you can say. That you will live. That you must be loved. That you will avoid questions most urgently in need of your attention. That you began as the fusion of a sperm and an egg of two people who were once strangers and may well still be. That life isn't fair. That life is sometimes good and sometimes better than good. That life is often not so good. That life is real. And if you can survive it well with love and art and meaning given where meaning's scarce. That you will learn to live with regret. That you will learn to live with respect. That the structures that constrict you may not be permanently constraining. That you will probably be okay. That you must accept change before you die, but you will die anyway. So you might as well live, and you might as well love. You might as well love. I love this poem about the rules for life, and I love just sort of its invitation for us this morning into this topic of grief. I love that you all are doing this series, Gray Matters, and I come to you this morning not as an expert in psychology or psychotherapy or even trauma work, not as an expert in grief-related theology. I come to you as both a resident expert, as a grief practitioner, because I was a resident expert grief avoider for the first 30 or so years of my life. I come to you this morning as someone who has had to do a lot of work around grief in my own life. I grieve often as a mother. I grieve as someone who went through my own faith shattering, as so many of you did. I grieve as someone who is divorced and walked away from all of the hopes and expectations for what family would look like for me. I grieve as someone who met the love of my life shortly before he lost his father suddenly and unexpectedly, and I lost that man on the day that he lost his father. I grieve to you as a woman, or I come to you as a woman who has grieved a late-term miscarriage, that with complications alongside of it, I nearly lost my life walking through it. I come to you as someone who grieves the weight of the world often, and who believes for us this morning that grief is a doorway. But it's taken me a long time to learn this. I come to you too as someone who found my way back to God in my sort of early 20s. We had grown up in church off and on, but I grew up in a really toxic home environment, and so going to church every Sunday and seeing people in their Sunday clothes with their big smiles and knowing what went on in my home, the abuse and the neglect and the addiction and the affairs, I just sort of had this idea as a child that, oh, if my parents are faking it that much, everybody at church on Sunday must be faking it. Right? They're putting on their Sunday clothes and their Sunday smiles, and they're all hypocrites as much as the family I grew up in. And so the first time I sort of deconstructed my faith was as a teenager when I walked away from that faith tradition. And then in my 20s, I kind of found my way back to God after I had been emancipated when I was 16 years old, lived on my own, got my GED, went to community college, ran a restaurant. I was in the hospitality industry, in the restaurant business, and I sort of had like hit some benchmarks for success, but I would say I still turned up empty at the end of the day. And I drove by this church right down the road from the restaurant that I ran. And so on an Easter Sunday, I thought, I think that's what people do on Easter, right? They go to church. And so I darkened the doors of this church on an Easter Sunday and had sort of an encounter, if you will. Something happened that I was drawn to. I left thinking like, maybe this is the thing that I have been missing in my life. I put a Post-it note on my bathroom mirror with this passage from the Bible that said, if you want to find your life, you have to be willing to lose it. And if you lose your life, you'll find your life in Christ. And so I really wrestled with, what does this mean? Somebody at the church opened up, you know, these small groups where you just like push a DVD, you push play, and you have snacks around the table. And so it's like all you have to do is be able to open up your home. And I signed up to lead a small group and really wondered, like, do I need to put the bong away before these people from church come over? It was like an art installation in my living room, and I didn't know, does this need to, you know, what do I do with this? But somebody thought it was a good idea to sort of empower me as a leader in that church, and the business I was running, we partnered with the church and did some like hurricane relief. This is in Florida 20 years ago now. And we showed up, you know, my cooks from the kitchen, like cussing like sailors and hungover from the night before, and the church ladies clutching their pearls, like very scared about what was happening. And I got to see people like find purpose and find meaning in doing this relief efforts. And then one day, the executive pastor of this church calls and says, Carrie, I know you've been starting restaurants. Have you ever thought about serving in ministry? Starting ministries? And I was like, no, absolutely not. That has never crossed my mind. And he had sort of an invitation for me to explore. And so I wrestled with that and decided to take a 70% pay cut and go work at this church doing middle school ministry of all things, and ended up marrying the high school pastor. And this was a Southern Baptist church, so I was a really good sort of evangelical Christian wife. This church taught me all of the parts of myself as a woman who had been in the marketplace and been in leadership, the parts of myself I had to sort of set aside or diminish or contort or play small. They really loved the implications of my leadership, but it had to be a certain size in a particular way. And then the man that I was married to wanted to go to seminary, and he wanted to go actually to this place called Willow Creek Community Church, which was a flagship church in North America. I had no idea what Willow was at the time. I thought, I'm going to go back into the marketplace and make real money while this guy goes and does this kind of ministry thing that he dreams about. And I ended up working at Willow Creek doing high school ministry and doing vision clarity and strategic planning work and special projects, reimagining parts of the way that we were doing church. And what I want you to understand is that this was actually really expansive for me. To leave a Southern Baptist church and go to a place that they let women lead and teach. They had women elders, and they were talking about the good news of the gospel. Like, we weren't just supposed to be some good white people doing compassion work. They were talking about justice work. What does it look like to reorient the systems and structures that lead to the need for compassion? They were engaged globally doing work in decolonized ways, where they were finding indigenous local leaders and saying, how can we empower you because you know what your community needs more than us? They had taken me to Israel, Palestine to understand the implications of evangelical theology and what was playing out in the Holy Land, to wrestle with ideas of mutuality and of liberation for all people. And then during this time working there, as I worked for the senior leader, I had some experiences that just didn't add up. And for a while, I kind of rationalized them. I thought, like, maybe this is like an age gap. You know, I'm 30. Maybe in his generation, he thinks these things are okay to say to women that I just find really inappropriate. Or then there were awkward invitations that I kept saying no to, even though when you work for this leader, you were taught you never say no to this leader. And over time, they were costing me some opportunities, and I thought, maybe this is so weird. This would never be appropriate. Okay, maybe he just thinks I'm like his daughter. Maybe there's like assumed familiarity. And I rationalized this bad behavior until it got so bad, there were just no more excuses that I could make. And so I decided to leave. And I thought, this is a place that values truth. This is a place that has taught me to value truth in the world. It's a place I found my voice. This is a leader who invested in me. Surely they would just want to know he has some unhealthy boundaries so that they could help him with integrity, right? And I had no idea the skeletons in the closet at this place. And I had no idea what speaking up and just telling them the truth of the reality of my experience, what that would cost me. I was obliterated. What the organization did to try to silence me and assassinate my character in public ways and talk about the axe to grind that these women had, as dozens of women came forward with stories in the Chicago Tribune and the New York Times talking about the harm of this man, they wanted to take me out. This is a place I had worked for 12 years. My family, my friends, my kids were hand-me-downs from the HR director's kids. Like, this was my community. It was my vocation. It was my family. And in an instant, all of those things were gone. You talk about a dark night of the soul. I just kept wrestling with, but who are these people? The head elder who got on a plane with a lawyer that this church had hired to try to make me go away and sat in a room with me and told me I was lying and making it up or being dramatic, and if they wanted to, they would make it look like I was pursuing him. Who are these people? What? These aren't the people that I know. These aren't the people that taught me about the character and nature of God and about our part to play in bringing goodness into the world. The grief was unimaginable. And up until this point, I had been known as a leader. I think some of you might resonate with this. As a leader who, this man said globally, I had the largest capacity of any leader he had ever worked with. And do you know why? Later, my counselor gave me a PhD in compartmentalization. I was so disconnected on the inside, I could have this massive capacity. In fact, I learned that over-functioning was a trauma response. That is how I avoided pain in my life. And here I am now, hardly able to get out of bed. There were days that I couldn't even function because I was just so exacerbated. Like, who are these people, and what's this thing I gave my life to? And does anybody actually believe the things that we said we believe? And at the same time, I'm navigating these very present wounds, some of the attachment wounds from my childhood. I have the HR director and the executive pastor, and neither one of them are willing to lean in for the sake of truth and do what's right. And it felt very much like my parents when I was 15, having to wrestle with leaving home because neither one of them were willing to lean in and go on a healing journey. And there was so much anger and emotional reactivity and unhealth, I couldn't even stay in their home. And so it opened up all of those wounds again. Right? All those things as a child that you think like, oh, if they loved me enough, they would have, right? Our attachment wounds come from the things that were done to us and also the things that were left undone. I have 2 kids now. I have a 10-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, and we like to go on walks a lot, okay? And so my son and I go on a walk pretty regularly, and even just yesterday, the number of times that this kid gets a rock in his shoe and he has to stop and take the shoe off and get the rock out of the shoe and put it back on. Usually I'm over there helping him. And do you know, for a while when this happened, I was like, oh, come on, it's a rock in your shoe. You know, like this reaction in me. And what I learned is because when I was 9 years old, if my sock was uncomfortable or I had a rock in my shoe or I had a need or I had a grief or I needed to cry or I needed an adult to show up for me, nobody showed up for 9-year-old Carrie. So it was pretty disruptive when my 9-year-old all of a sudden had needs. And this 9-year-old little girl inside of me is so annoyed, right? The entitlement of this kid to want his comfort to be treated right now. Like, come on, what are we doing? And I learned that these childhood wounds that I carried were still impacting me, right? They're still sort of playing a part in the story of how I live, popping up, if I'm honest with you, in the most inconvenient times. I read recently that 70 to 80% of Americans right now are living in something called adrenal fatigue. That it means that they're sort of at allostatic load, like grief or stress or overwhelm or anxiety about financial realities or news headlines or polarization around the election or how are you going to pay for college or not being able to have kids, or whatever those things are, they have hit capacity. And because we have not learned how to metabolize our grief, we lock up, we shut down, and it comes out as reactivity getting leaked all over the people around us that we love the most. What I've learned in my own story is that grief for me is a doorway. Grief is a doorway for us to engage in real, actual life. My friend Jason Miller, who's a pastor in the PEC, wrote a book called When the World Breaks. And he talks about what happens when your fundamental frame for reality falls apart. And I don't think this happens to us just one time in our journey, right? How many times has your fundamental frame of reality fallen apart? And I think that grief, over and over again in those moments, grief becomes a doorway for us. The pain that comes up when our reality, the fundamental picture of reality that we've depended on, falls apart, grief becomes an invitation to embrace reality. Grief is a doorway for us. Mary Oliver talks about, like, what are you, just breathing just a little and calling it a life? Like, how many of us are breathing just a little and calling it a life? Grief is a doorway for us to wrestle with actually the very implications of the kind of life that we want, but it doesn't start there, right? Grief is an invitation for us to be attentive to the way things are not as we imagined, not as we hoped, perhaps not as the bill of goods you were sold told you that things were going to be. I think for most of us, if we're honest, there are family of origin wounds that bring grief up for us. We like to think of grief as like the loss of a loved one, right? The death of someone that we cared about, or divorce, or the loss of a relationship, when grief is a pretty ever-present reality. When you think about your family of origin that you grew up in, when you think about whatever your faith family of origin story is, I perceive that so many of us, if you grew up in evangelicalism or perhaps even a mainline church, but you heard Christian radio or read a book about how to be a good Christian wife, somewhere you were formed by the spiritual prosperity gospel. If you do this and you do this, it's going to lead to this way. right? If you hide this part of you and you cut off this part of you and you sort of run on fear and shame, that eventually it's going to be okay, even if that's just after we die. It's hell avoidance, right? But this like spiritual prosperity gospel, if you do this and this is how it is going to end up for you. I don't know about you, but I have just found that entire prosperity gospel falls apart when I reckon with real actual life. Maybe for you, it's grief around those family of origin wounds. Maybe for you, it's the things that you least want to access that are a part of your story. Maybe it's your faith family of origin, spiritual prosperity gospel wounds. Maybe it's just the ways that you were cultured and socialized. Right? I can't unsee the ways that we are formed as men and women, the ways that we are formed as humans to cut off parts of ourselves. And I think part of the grief journey is this invitation to remember the parts of ourselves that at one time we had to cut off for the sake of belonging, which I'm learning isn't actually belonging, right? I think that grief is an invitation for us. Grief is a doorway. And I would say to you, one of the ways that I am working to get in touch with my grief, part of how I started on this journey was after that shattering for me, doing some trauma work. And at this time, I wanted nothing to do with God. I was so frustrated with God. And I remember in my trauma counselor's office talking about this, like, I'm so angry at God. How could God let this happen? Did God not know this is what was going to happen when I was faithful and obedient to the Spirit by speaking up about this? How could God do this to me? And she said, I just wonder, do you have any space in your imagination to think that maybe God grieves with you? Maybe God's heart is actually more broken than yours is about this reality in God's church. What does it look like for us to imagine God grieving with us? Psalm 34:18 talks about this, how God is near to the brokenhearted. One version says, if you feel kicked in the gut, God is right there with you. And this was my experience, even when I couldn't use God language, even when I talked about God as the algorithm of the universe was about as close as I could get to even saying God in that time. And over time, I discovered these sort of divine imprints, like at the cellular level in my body as I'm doing trauma work, as I'm wrestling with these parts of my story growing up and then seeing the implications of how they play out. Do you know, I just want to give you this permission, every single adaptive pattern that you have in your life makes sense. Every one of them. Addiction, numbing out, most of us, it's disassociation, right? Whether it's sports or television or food or busy activity, whatever we can do to just disassociate and disconnect and not have to feel things, right? All of us have these adaptive patterns, and every single one of them that you wrestle with makes sense. The wisdom of our bodies to survive blows my mind. The divine imprint at the cellular level, the wisdom of our bodies to heal, blows my mind. The ways that our bodies are meant to work, the ways our bodies are speaking to us all the time, but we've been so cultured and socialized to just disconnect from them. The signals that they're sending us consistently. One of mine for me, when I am not attending to grief or things in my story that I need to, and I want to get into how grief as a doorway invites us to engage grief as a spiritual practice. For me, one of the ways that it comes up for me is that I feel like the Hulk is going to come out of me. Do you guys know what this feels like? I did some trauma work with this organization called Onsite, and they have this saying that honestly really drove me nuts when they first said it. They say, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And I actually got pretty frustrated because I thought, wait a minute, we use this word hysterical to like write women and their emotions off, right? Like, come on, get over it. But the more I understood the principle of it, I was like, oh, okay, I see this play out in the men in my life. When it's hostile, it's historical. And what they're saying is that those moments in our journey when it's hysterical or it's hostile and this feeling that we have coming up in us doesn't actually match the circumstance in front of us, what's happening is our bodies are remembering something historical in our past. This feels similar in some way to some pain that we have experienced previously. It feels like a message. Maybe in your marriage, your wife says stuff to you that feels a lot like what somebody said to you growing up that was harmful or hurtful, or vice versa, right? This is these moments because the grid of our nervous system can only experience things through the lens of what our past is. And those things drive us in ways we are unaware of when we're living disconnected from our hearts. I perceive that grief is a doorway to our real, actual lives. You want a better sex life? Do your grief work. You want deeper connections with the people that you love? Do some grief work. You want to parent differently? You know that you don't want to parent the way that you were parented, but you're not quite sure the ways that you want to parent. Do your grief work and parent that wounded inner child every single time you show up to a need that your kids have. It will blow your mind, the kind of parent that you can be. You want to engage what's broken in the world around us? Do your grief work. I perceive that grief is a doorway. It is an invitation for us. And here's the harsh reality about this is that we actually can't be present to the pain of the people around us when we're not present to the pain inside of us. Right? My friend Michelle taught me several years ago about the language of tears, is what she calls it. The language of tears that she speaks fluently, she says, and what she taught me is that our tears are typically like lots of different types of tears. Tears don't always mean something is wrong or that we're sad. Do you know when you experience some moment of goodness or delight with your partner, and you feel that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart and maybe champagne bubbles in your stomach, sometimes tears come to our eyes because this is something that you have so deeply longed for. Right? Tears of gratitude, tears of fear, tears of sadness, tears of joy, tears of delight. Tears are actually one of the ways, this is the magic of our bodies. It's one of the ways that our bodies return to homeostasis. When we hold those tears back, it disconnects us from ourselves and from one another. When is the last time that you spoke the language of tears? About your own pain or the pain of what we're seeing in the headlines around the world right now. We can't enter into the pain or discomfort of the world when we are avoiding our own, right? And I don't know much about faith and theology these days in a way that I could offer you answers, but part of my journey was picking up the pieces of that faith shattering that I walked through, and part of what's sort of getting reassembled from those shattered pieces is a different imagination for what it means to be a Christian or follow Jesus, or what it means to actually be a part of the beloved community, to be a part of the church. And I perceive that when we work through this sort of journey of first owning our belovedness, maybe you had the same experience of me that when you were a child, just think about the trauma of this. You were told that you were totally depraved, totally broken, nothing redemptive inside of you, that if you didn't say these words and accept Jesus into your heart, you were going to spend eternity in hell. Can you just think about how traumatic that is for a child's imagination? And how much that would cause fear and shame to shape your lens for the world? But I think there's a different imagination, a different story that I find much more compelling in the ancient sacred text. And it's this idea that actually in the very beginning of creation, in the very beginning of you, there is something that God says, which is, you are good. There's something beautiful and profound about what is created. And the thing I just can't get over is how each and every one of us is this unique and distinct image of God. Like, my impression of the character and nature of God is incomplete unless you bring yours to bear. My impression of the image and character and nature of God, it's incomplete unless I get to see God in you, unless you let us see you. And that begins with this sort of owning our belovedness, owning and living from that place of belovedness. You have nothing to earn or prove or gain or lose to live and receive that sort of belovedness. And then we go on this journey of sort of belonging, right? Belonging to ourselves, understanding as we begin to come home to ourselves and remember these parts that we've lobbed off for the sake of acceptance. When we begin to belong to ourselves, you can't miss how much we belong to one another. how much we belong to the sacred earth that we're a part of, the way the trees breathe with us and we breathe with the trees, right? Like there is this sacred belonging, the ways that we belong to one another, the ways that we belong to the divine, the ways that we belong to our neighbors, the ways that we belong to our enemies. And these days, my imagination for the church is just shaped around this idea of that we get to become redemptive presence. When we are people who reckon with our belovedness and we're doing work to belong to ourselves and to one another, we actually we unleash some metaphysical reality here on earth when we are in that process, on that journey of becoming redemptive presence. And what I actually perceive is that for so many of us, our wounds, which all of us carry, either become poison when they're untended to, and we live from this place of reactivity, just inflicting emotional reactivity on the world around us and on other people, when we're not doing the soul work, even people who are passionate about justice, when we're passionate about the systems and structures and reorienting what's broken in the world, but we're not being attentive to what's broken inside of us, we are inflicting poison on the world. But there is this invitation to sit with those broken places and to allow that pain to become medicine that helps heal the world. I sat with a woman this week who was a Congolese refugee who was working through the implications of losing her home and everything she has ever known. Circumstances that she faced, that her family faced, gender-based violence, the consequences of what is so broken in the world, that she was displaced and now lives on the other side of the world and is trying to pick up the pieces and rebuild a life. I think about the headlines right now and our LGBTQ plus siblings and the ways that they're being dehumanized and losing access to human rights. Our trans siblings need our advocacy, need access to the very same things that so many of us can access. I think about right now the straight white men. Do you know what's facing the straight white men in our stories right now? Addiction is at an all-time high. Loneliness is at an all-time high. Suicide rate is at an all-time high amongst this population. Bell Hooks says that straight white men and patriarchy and the ways that they're formed, they don't inflict violence on women or other people first. The first act of violence that they have to commit is on themselves because they have to cut off the emotional parts of themselves. And so many of us are full of the pain of the wounds that we've experienced at the hands of straight white men. It's really hard to be a sacred space for their own healing journey, right? What we are facing in the world around us, what's happening in Israel, Palestine, this atrocity of a people who experienced a Holocaust and have not reckoned with that reality such that they are inflicting that very same harm on an entire people group, I can't even fathom it. I have friends there. I have a friend who has lost 120 family members in the last year. Family, our grief is a doorway. Our grief is an invitation to reckon with the pain inside of us such that we do not inflict that on the world around us, but that perhaps we could become wounded healers who show up to the world with a different redemptive imagination for mutuality. For what does it look like for flourishing, not just my own and not just my kids, but for your kids and for the kids who are living in a place right now that per capita have more amputated limbs than anything we have ever seen. What I'm finding in the spiritual practice of grief work is that grief is a doorway. My own grief is a doorway. The practices that I use to engage grief right now, there's one I'd like to offer you, and it's simply called the prayer of examine. And this is something I started doing daily. I would go for a walk and just spend a little bit of time in reflection, like, God, where were you at work today and I missed it? Where were you working around me? And I was just wanting to be so quick to make a decision or to get dinner cooked. You know, I was an aha mom. Do you do this? Like, when your kids are trying to talk to you and you're not actually there and present. Like, God, where was that? Where do I have repair work that I need to go do? God, where were you coming to me? Where was Christ coming to me through my neighbor or through someone experiencing homelessness that lives in the woods behind my house and I was too busy to stop and be present with them? A new one that I've added to the list recently is like, God, where is there resistance coming up in me? Because what I'm finding in my own story is my resistance reveals what I'm still loyal to in my story, the pain that I still want to hold on to. The villain or the victim narrative that I still can't wrestle with. Where is resistance coming up in my story? What I'm learning about this journey of being present to my grief, about, if I'm honest with you, probably for the last 6 years, crying almost every day when I sit with my own grief and the grief of the world. What I'm learning is that every desire begins with an ache. If we're to be redemptive presence here on this planet, if we're to be a part of healing what's so broken in the world, if we're to be a part of a different metaphysical reality that is the kingdom of God, that's a part of the redemption and restoration of all things, all of creation, every single one of us, we have to be attentive to those aches inside of us, because every longing for that more beautiful world, it begins with an ache. Every act of resistance to the ways that are, so that we can reorient to the ways that could be, begins with us being attentive to our aches, leaning into our grief. Family, grief is a doorway. Grief is an invitation, and I pray that we would be people that dig into holding that sacred space as our systems allow, as your body allows you to be attuned to the pain that's inside of you, to be connected to the pain that's inside of the world, to be a part of that redemptive presence that is remaking the world. I want to offer you, as I close, a prayer, a blessing in times of violence. There are days that it is really difficult for me to hold on to hope. When you look at the headlines right now, when you think about what's happening in our country, when you think about no matter what happens in November, we are going to be in a mess. It is really hard for me to find hope. And so in addition to this prayer of examine, I have another spiritual practice, which is just to be attentive to the glimmers, like the sparks of flint trying to light a fire. What are those just moments of glimmers? What are those moments throughout the day that I come home to my body? You know that deep breath that you take, that the hug with your children, the connection with a coworker, a call to your parent that you're grateful to still talk to. What are those moments of glimmers throughout the day, and how am I savoring those? How am I holding on to those? And I want to offer this blessing to you as sort of a glimmer, maybe a spark of hope that we get to walk out of here with. A blessing in a time of violence, which is to say this blessing is always. Which is to say there is no place this blessing does not long to cry out in lament, to weep its words and sorrow, to scream its lines in sacred rage. Which is to say, there is no day this blessing ceases to whisper into the ear of the dying, the despairing, the terrified. Which is to say, there is no moment this blessing refuses to sing itself into the heart of the hated and the hateful, the victim and the victimizer, with every last ounce of hope it has. Which is to say, there is none that can stop it, none that can halt its course, none that will still its cadence, none that will delay its rising, none that can keep it from springing forth from the mouths of us who hope, from the hands of us who act, from the hearts of us who love, from the feet of us who will not cease our stubborn, aching, marching. Until this blessing has spoken its final word, until this blessing has breathed its benediction in every place, in every tongue. Peace, peace, peace.
This goes out to the stress, sorting out a million thoughts running through your head. To everyone that's waiting for better days ahead, and tired and frustrated and leaving words unsaid, please don't hold your breath. Just breathe, 'cause it's a miracle we can breathe. And there's power in the way that we breathe. Release your heavy burdens and let everything that has breath praise the Lord. This is why we have breath. Praise the Lord. Sometimes you're in the desert, sometimes you feel the pain, sometimes he calms a storm, and sometimes he lets it rain. Please don't hold your breath, just breathe. It's a miracle we can breathe. There's power in the way that we breathe. Release your heavy burdens and let everything that has breath praise the Lord. This is why we have breath. Praise, just breathe. 'Cause it's a miracle we can breathe. There's power in the way that we breathe. Release your heavy burdens and let everything that has breath praise the Lord. This is why we have breath. Praise the Lord. Just want to invite you to connect with your breath. Our breath is the way that we can greet our grief, that we can journey through that doorway. Our breath is how we see each other, how we create together. I can feel my lungs taking air again. I'm breathing in oxygen. I can feel my strength coming back again. I'm breathing Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. With our breath we praise the Lord. However you are leaving this space today, may you know that you are good. May you know that your grief is holy. Maybe if you are ahead on the journey in that grief work, maybe you reach behind and grab somebody's hand who needs you. May you know that as you go through this week, that your breath goes with you. And as you breathe, you are connected to the divine. That we all bear God's image. May you know you are loved. May you be seen. May you be held. And when the world feels overwhelming, return to your breath. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. With a breath we praise the Lord. So just breathe, 'cause it's a miracle we can breathe. There's power in the way that we breathe. Release your heavy burden and let everything that has breath praise the Lord. This is why we have breath. Praise the Lord.
Y'all can have, I turned it on too fast. Y'all can have a seat. If we could borrow just a couple more minutes of your time. So I mentioned this when I invited Carrie up, that she's the executive director of something called the Post-Evangelical Collective. And so one, Carrie's back up here. Would you first thank her for... But Carrie, would you, like the elevator speech, whatever kind of the succinct version of that, what is the PEC? What is the Post-Evangelical Collective?
I mean, it started organically, but essentially the Post-Evangelical Collective is this like ragtag group of pastors, artists, and leaders that are have felt ecclesiologically homeless in the church in North America, have felt like the predominant model of faith or being a Christian doesn't represent their value system. And so I like to say we're working through sort of a different eschatological imagination. Maybe it's a different paradigm, a different value proposition, a different understanding of a liberative view of Christian spirituality beyond like hell avoidance strategy that many of us were handed.
Y'all, I can't say how refreshing it is to hear someone other than me say eschatological from this stage. But really, so Watershed and the PEC sort of running parallel to each other, and then intersected kind of through some call it serendipity, call it providence, encounters,
the universe,
and exactly, conversations, things like that, I've been to a number of conferences. Tommy has been to a number of conferences. Our whole team went to the Post-Evangelical Collective Conference that was in Raleigh at our sister church, Church on Morgan, back in April. But what are some of the things that you I don't know, envision the PEC doing in the next, year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
I mean, I touched on this idea that we really believe the church is to be a redemptive presence in the world, partnering with Christ in the redemption and restoration of all things, that's a big thing to think about doing in the next couple of years. But we imagine the church as a faith space of mutuality and flourishing. So we try to connect people who have been on this journey already, much like Watershed. You guys are a flagship church in this sort of movement. And we just, every single week, I hear from pastors, artists, leaders that are like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody else has the same heartbeat. I can't believe somebody else is wrestling with these same things. And much like many of your churches, we're not trying to provide, like, here's the answers and the 7 steps to success from here on out. It's really like, here's a place to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Here's a place to work out these ideas and to bear witness to the journey of other people that are dreaming some similar dreams for the world. So we really want to connect folks who have been on that journey. We want to resource them. As you could imagine, when you have a more liberative imagination for mutuality and partnership, or how to parent, or what missions look like in a decolonized way, there's lots of things that we're trying to reimagine, and we need resources and shared liturgy and shared books and support groups and online cohorts. I say often, many of us are working through sort of spiritual trauma, many of the pastors and leaders in this space, and many pastoring congregations of people who are working through spiritual trauma. It's almost like complex PTSD. And so a lot of what we're incubating something called the Healing Collective right now that's coming alongside pastors, artists, leaders in this space and helping them do some of that inner work, hoping that that will translate to resources being created for churches to engage in that kind of work. So the connect, resource, and then launch. And that's super fun because we're thinking about launching faith spaces of mutuality and flourishing in really non-traditional and entrepreneurial ways. So that has been super fun too, to think about like what does this community need for the sake of liberation, and what does that look like Monday through Friday, not just on Sunday morning. And so the churches are looking quite different, unique, and distinct. And we got a lot of mainline friends coming along, like we have all these empty buildings and no imagination for the future of the church, and you guys are like have spiritual revitalization happening. And so it's wild how ecumenical it is, and how many different people from different faith backgrounds are sort of showing up for this liberative invitation to Christian spirituality.
Text me later and I'll tell you what ecumenical means.
Are there other words you want me to drop so I can be a nerd like you too?
I'll text you. I'll text you later as well.
Okay.
2 takeaways from this, y'all. All right, the first, when you're at Thanksgiving dinner and you're getting the side eye from your family and they're like, what kind of denomination is that church even a part of? PEC. Just say PEC. That'll sound real official, real formal.
Yeah.
We're a PEC
We have a website
church.
too, if that helps legitimize anything.
Don't send them to the website. It'll. But no. We're a PEC congregation, and so that'll maybe get you at least to the first course. But here's the second thing. If you
drop eschatological, they'll leave you alone too, right?
They probably will.
That's the tip for the second course.
Yeah. We're at the forefront of the intersection of ecclesiology and eschatology. Yeah, so anyway. No, but here's the second thing, y'all. When we invite, yes, I'm going to talk about giving. When we invite y'all into generosity, it's not just around what we already have. Yes, we have to pay our mortgage. Yes, you have to pay me and Kim and Sean and, and I don't want to trivialize those things. I mean, this building, I talk about this almost every time I'm up here, does really important work, not just on Sunday, but throughout the week. But we have aspirations. We believe in things that are beyond ourselves and sort of the limits of this community as it exists currently, and the PEC is a huge piece of that. And so one of the things that is on sort of our bucket list, our to-do list, our punch list, if the tide of giving of resources were to rise here in the coming months, years, etc., is to lean in even further to this relationship that we have with Carrie and the PEC. So if that is meaningful to you, if that is inspiring to you, if you thought she was pretty good at speaking, which I think is pretty undeniable. Just know that's a piece of what we're inviting you into. And if that helps you kind of sleep easier at night, awesome. So you got that, you got the Thanksgiving stuff, probably more than you bargained for this morning. We've also gone a little longer than you probably bargained for, so I'm going to dismiss you into your Sunday, into your week. Thank you for being here. I didn't tell her this, but Carrie's going to be in the back afterwards if you would like to meet her. I'm not going to meet you because I've been battling some sort of crud or something like that, but she'll do double duty.
And Dominique will be there too, right?
Yeah, Dom will be there. Yeah. I didn't tell her that either, but Dawn will be there. But thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next week.
This is never gonna go our way. We're gonna have to guess what's on your mind. Say something, something like you love me. That you wanna move away from the noise of this place. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I wanna believe everything you're trying to say to me. So open up my eyes. Tell me I'm alive. This is never gonna go our way. I'm gonna have to guess what's on your mind. So open up my eyes. Tell me I'm alive. This is never gonna go our way. I'm gonna have to guess what's on your mind. But I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I wanna believe everything you're trying to say to me. But I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I wanna believe everything you're trying to say to me. So open up my eyes. Tell me I'm alive. This is never gonna go our way. I'm gonna have to guess what's on your mind. So open up my eyes. Tell me I'm alive. Open up my eyes. Tell me I'm alive. Taught me the courage when stars for you left. How life carries on endlessly, even after death, with sureness of breath just to be seen by my eye. Taught me the courage to start before you left. How life